Now I would like to introduce our speaker for today, David Rodriguez. David is a manager for the New Jersey Division of Purchase and Property Operations and NJSTART Vendor Administration. He will be talking about New Jersey's NJSTART eProcurement system, which was chosen as a Cronin Award finalist. David, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Jordan. And good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to present NJSTART. We were proud to share some of our successes to date and hope that this presentation will be helpful, especially to states that are currently considering an eProcurement solution of their own. On June 20 of 2016, the Division of Purchase and Property formally announced the premiere of NJSTART, the state of New Jersey's new eProcurement solution. Along with that, we also launched a comprehensive communications campaign that was designed to support the launch. Our primary objective was to move away from the state's transactional legacy mainframe application and a variety of other older supporting systems with names like Maxi, that was more than 20 years old, to a modern single solution. As a result, the state of New Jersey is in the process of permanently retiring 4 of its major legacy systems, one of which is Maxi. Others have names like ERFP Notification, eBid, eCatalog. And in addition to that, we've been able to integrate our financial, procurement, and tax revenue systems, resulting in significant cost savings. We have integrated the state's financial system, named NJCFS, along with the Division of Revenue and Enterprises database, to NJSTART by creating interfaces that allow these 3 systems to be connected. NJSTART stands for New Jersey State-of-the-Art Requisition Technology, and so far it's been highly successful in attracting new vendors, with more than 17,000 suppliers already registered. As of lunchtime today, we had 17,198 vendors, and we are averaging 1,000 new vendors per month. At the core of this new system is the NJSTART vendor portal, which I'm going to be able to demonstrate shortly. And it's designed to make it easier for vendors to do business with the state. What we simply tried to do is to consolidate all of our procurement activities into a one-stop shop. Some of the most prominent features of the vendor portal include a vendor library, which allows vendors to have an online repository for their forms, eliminating the need to prepare the same forms over and over again. Vendors can also see a snapshot of the certifications, which I will also highlight in a little while. And these are the certifications that the state of New Jersey requires them to have in order to do business. Small and disadvantaged businesses also now have a directory to network and identify more opportunities. And in fact, there is a registered vendor search right on our homepage at njstart.gov that anyone can use to find registered vendors simply by doing a registered vendor search using a number of different criteria. Vendors have the ability now to manage their financial profile and even select their preferred form of payment, whether it's check or electronic funds transfers. Vendors can look at their profile and take corrective action whenever it's needed, since the onus is on the vendor with this new system to maintain their own profile. The underlying procurement application is in use in a few other states, specifically Arizona and Massachusetts. But New Jersey is leading the way, we believe, by coming up with this fully integrated vendor portal solution, which is what really makes our system unique. The agencies that we serve have also indicated their enthusiasm for NJSTART, since they now have an opportunity to review records and forms online within the vendor library. They have access to each vendor's profile, and this really assists with the compliance efforts. Agencies are also very excited that they can, for the first time, track orders and payments through various New Jersey approval paths that have been created. Due to the integration of the state's financial, procurement, and tax revenue systems, vendors now certify their W-9s electronically. And this is, for many, a great improvement. We get a lot of questions from vendors about where they can send their paperwork to, and paper copies are no longer required. This has resulted in the reduction of processing time by state staff. To enhance this one-stop shop, the Division of Purchase and Property revamped its existing website. It includes a prominent vendor support page, which features online resources such as reference guides and videos. I'll take us to that spot shortly. In addition, we've created a section within the website specifically for agencies, where we have loaded agency reference guides that are password protected and only available to state-using agencies. The division also provides real-time vendor support via phone and email. I had mentioned to Jordan that at this point we've received over 6,000 emails through our dedicated NJSTART mailbox, in addition to thousands of phone calls. We have a small staff of approximately 4 people, and this is the staff that is now supporting a base of over 17,000 vendors. I had mentioned the communications campaign in the very beginning, and what we did was we began to look at our various target audiences and launched a major print and advertising campaign that coincided with the premiere of NJSTART, and that one was designed specifically for the business community. In addition to that, we've targeted procurement officials within the state with other outreach initiatives, and we are now beginning to look at various target groups, including veterans, veteran-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and so on. So in summary for this PowerPoint presentation, NJSTART provides an efficient and consolidated process for state agencies to conduct business. It certainly modernizes the way the services and commodities are procured. It has allowed us to unify various systems, including our procurement and financial systems, and it plays a key role in our state's efforts to make New Jersey a more attractive place to do business. So with that, let me take you to NJSTART. And I am going to go in as a vendor today using our test account.
Hi, David. This is Jordan. Don't forget and go to share your screen and share your desktop.
Gotcha. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
That would help, right?
It would. There we go.
Beautiful. Can you see that?
It's loading.
Do you see the maintenance homepage?
Not yet. It still says it's loading. Not sure why. Okay, seems like it's not working. Go, if you don't mind, can you, do you see something on the Adobe Connect thing that says stop sharing and you can try it again?
Let me try it now.
Okay, there we go.
See it?
Yep,
okay.
Now we can see the maintenance homepage.
Beautiful. Okay, so I am in as a vendor, and I am in as the seller administrator in that specific role. And so this allows me to maintain my own organization information. And these are the various tabs that I see. And I can look at general organization information. I can look at my addresses. I can add new remit addresses. And this system allows vendors to select addresses by type. So general would be just that. They can add as many remit addresses as they need, whether it's corporate, some subsidiary office, so that they can manage on their own. The commodity codes that they select are tied to bidding opportunities, and so it's important for them to select the right codes if they want to be notified automatically as new bidding opportunities are released. This is how they do it. So I mentioned the terms and categories section, and this is really important. During the initial part of the registration, vendors are required to complete the first 5 categories and certifications numbers 1, 3, 4, and 5 are mandatory. So that gives us their primary business function. The prompt payment exemption does not apply to most businesses, but it's something that our Office of Management and Budget wanted included. Business formation, type of company that they have. And this is where they select whether they want an electronic funds transfer payment from the state or whether they prefer a paper check. We do have some foreign entities that register. One of our colleagues, Alan Sidlow, has become an expert in helping foreign entities register within NJSTART. I think Alan is on the line today. Hey, Alan. And so we have been able to accommodate even foreign companies into the system. I think there's a state requirement, though, that does not allow them to use electronic funds transfer, so that's what that second box is for. But most folks will pick either EFT for direct deposit, otherwise known as ACH or EFT, or a paper check, and this is where they do it. There is a portion within their remit address that I will go back to in a second that allows them to actually enter their banking information. Here's the substitute W-9 area, where all they have to do now is certify that the tax ID number that they provide is in fact theirs, and that it is correct, that they are not subject to backup withholding, and that they are in this country legally, either as a U.S. citizen or a defined U.S. person for federal tax purposes. They select if they agree with the statement, and this becomes their substitute W-9. Along with that, we've been able to shorten some forms within the system, and ownership disclosure is required at the time of bid submission. We give vendors the opportunity to certify right here in this area. So if they don't have anyone with a 10% greater interest in their company, they simply check that second box and no ownership disclosure form is required at that point. If it's a nonprofit, they check the first box. And if a bidder ownership form is in fact required, they then have the option of either getting it from within the system, and I'll show you where that is shortly, or they can attach it to their profile. That is their option. Disclosure of investment activities in Iran is another form that the state of New Jersey requires, and again, simply by checking this box, they no longer need the Iran form. Disclosure of investigations and other actions involving bidder is a form that we require. They can take care of that in this area, and this one applies to nonprofit officers. Beyond that, these certifications are grayed out, so the vendor is not allowed to complete any of them because the state of New Jersey will maintain these records. This is where the Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services comes into play. So NJSTART is connected to their database, which is used for business registration certificates, another requirement within the state. So because the two are now connected, that system updates the NJSTART record. As soon as a vendor registers, we'll know whether their BRC, or Business Registration Certificate, is active, inactive, revoked. If the tax ID does not match, it would indicate that. Or if there's a problem with the name, the vendor legal name, not matching the tax ID that they've used, this picks it up. And again, the source is our own New Jersey Division of Revenue database. We also have certification for Chapter 51. It's another compliance requirement, and we maintain that internally through a manual process at this point. We monitor debarments, and then all of these others, AAEO compliance, small business, and so on. A lot of these are maintained by the Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services, and we manage the insurance liability compliance internally at the Division of Purchase and Property. So that's it for categories and certifications. Let me go back and show you where a vendor would then have the option of entering their banking information if they want an ACH payment. And so basically we have these fields locked down until they determine that, yes, they want to receive electronic funds from the state. They check this box, and it opens up the various fields that they need to then enter in terms of the description for their account, the country, the bank name, account type, routing number, account number. That IAT flag means if it's an international or foreign bank, they would check that, and we would treat them differently. So that is it for the ACH, the EFT certifications. Let me go to the forms section. I think that might be helpful. So I am in, again, as a seller administrator for my company, the DPP company, DPP test account, and I have the ability here to attach any forms that I want to my profile. So far, I've attached a letter from the Office of Management and Budget about my tax ID and legal name, an offer and acceptance sample, a Chapter 51 form, and that's all within my profile. So a vendor can attach any form to their profile. In addition to that, we have forms that reside within the system, and those are listed separately here. So if I'd like to add a form, I would click on this button, find the forms that reside within the system, and this gives me all of my options in terms of forms that I can actually begin to fill out and attach to my profile so that they reside within the system. So I've already selected a bunch of them, and they are right in my profile, as you can see here. And so if I open one that I created, I have a bunch right here. You'll see what it looks like. Just click, and it will open, hopefully, and show you what's in my profile at the moment. And these are some of the things that I've included. So this falls within the vendor's profile, and again, the responsibility is on the vendor to maintain their profile, update their profile as people leave the company, add new users. This is all part of the seller administrator role. So let me go to another tab and show you some of our resources that we have online. All right, so our vendor support page is featured right on our homepage. And it takes vendors right to the Division of Purchase and Property's main website. And so right here, and we try to direct as many vendors as we can right to our website because all of the resources exist. We have the premiere video, which some of you who made it to Minneapolis may have seen during my presentation to receive the Cronin Award, the Finalist Award. Vendors can basically click on their vendor reference guides. There's also a registration video. It's about 5 minutes long. It walks them through the process step by step, and we advise them to do that before trying to register, and it avoids a lot of frustration on their part. We have all of our vendor reference guides listed here: vendor registration, establishing a doing business as organization, login password, company info, vendor categories, inserts, vendor forms, attaching files, you name it, we have it. So we also have a couple of videos on how to find the bid, because everything is available online. Request for revision, otherwise known as the BAFO process. So this is what we have for them. My favorite is the FAQs. After working with Alan and our other team members, we compiled about 20 or so of the most frequently asked questions. And we put them all here online. All they have to do is find what they're looking for. So if they want to add their banking information, they click, and this gives them a step-by-step without having to read through 20 pages on what they need to do to add their banking information in NJSTART. If there's a company name change, what they need to do. If they have questions during the Q&A period, after the Q&A period, we provide guidance on that. Where do I send my W-9 form now? That's listed. So this has been very, very useful. It saved us a lot of time, and this is all available to them. I mentioned for some of you procurement folks that we also have something available for agencies, and we do. And so if I can go back to this, let me just show you where that is. These are our agency reference guides right here for state use only. And so as we have a staff person who is the liaison with all of our agency clients, and she is working with them on things such as creating approval paths, and we've started the process of getting their feedback and putting together reference guides for their use on how to release orders, how to conduct punch-outs, purchase order receipts, invoicing, how to view vendor categories and certifications so that when they look at a vendor's profile, they understand exactly what they're looking for. We have to provide one on how to look up NJSTART vendors and MAXI and NJCFS, those legacy systems that I mentioned earlier, because there's a change element to this, as you might imagine, and we are trying to work with them to get them used to the idea of looking at vendors in NJSTART, which is totally different from anything that they're used to in MAXI or the NJCFS world. So we've provided that guidance as well. This is what's available now. As I said, all of these are password protected, and so if they want them, we provide the password, and then they're all set up. So I think that's really what I wanted to cover in terms of the portal, some aspects of the system that might be helpful to the procurement officials who are on the line and agency folks. So at this point, Jordan, if you're good, unless there's something else that you'd like me to get into, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Dave. I see some people are typing in here. I'll give them a second to type that in. If anybody would like to ask a question or would like for him to show you a different section of the portal, you can unmute your phone by dialing *6, and you can unmute at that point and ask your question, or you can type it in the box there. Okay, I've got one question here. It says, you mentioned a change element, which is very important. Did you plan for resistance? How have you overcome the resistance?
Well, that's a great question, and I'll give you one example. I won't mention which agency it is. I'll just say that it's one of our largest agencies. I always thought they were one of the most proactive in terms of using new technology, but yet they have been the most resistant to this particular change. I think part of the reason is that they have so many homegrown systems of their own, and they also receive federal funding to account for it, that there's been resistance on the part of that agency to move faster into the NJSTART world. What we are doing is several things. One, we have our agency liaison working very closely with the people who are down in the weeds, who are supposed to, they've now been charged with implementing NJSTART in an agency that is very, very large. So that's step one. In addition to that, we've gone right to the top. We convened a meeting of procurement officers in October, where we brought all of the heads from every major state executive level agency, state branch, executive branch agencies, into the division to have a chat with them about NJSTART and to provide an update on where we were and to really get their buy-in. And we think that we accomplished that successfully. So we're going to do it from the top down and the bottom up in order to get this agency to move forward. They are moving forward. They're moving forward slowly, but I think eventually they'll catch up, especially once some of the other agencies that are really a lot further ahead begin to demonstrate that this is something that definitely beats the old way of doing business.
Great, thank you. We got another question here that says, what are the responsibilities of the agency liaison?
The agency liaison is responsible for several things. One is training. Her job is to ensure that every agency has an org administrator, and it is through the org administrators that we are now getting to the other folks within each agency. So we identify point people at each agency that could serve in an org admin capacity. Our liaison then brings them in to conduct training. And once they're comfortable with that, then they can begin to spread the word internally at their own agencies. In addition to that, she does follow up with them to ensure that they are definitely making progress in their development and in their knowledge of NJSTART. But more specifically, because it is a role-based system, as I mentioned, we've broken it down into roles. So she is the basic purchasing subject matter expert who then goes out to the agencies to work with them. In addition to that, there's an accounts payable role. So she has to deal with the accounts payable folks who are going to serve in that capacity. And so we've been able to separate them into those groups, and then she's provided the training. That's the first step. In addition to that, she's helping them develop approval paths. So every agency then has a template and a structure that we have already created, the agency liaison has created, and really fleshed out and tested so that she can then meet with agency folks to have them replicate that same approval process within their agency. So that's her second primary role. I should add, and I need to give her credit for this, that she's also the state's purchasing card administrator. So she's doing some heavy lifting for us on the NJSTART side, but her main job is really to, and this is why she was selected to be the agency liaison, because she already had relationships with people across the state because of the purchasing and travel card programs that we run in partnership with Bank of America. It's a huge program, multi-million-dollar program, and she's responsible for that as well. But the long and short of it is that she had relationships already established that she can now take advantage of to get people into NJSTART. Those are her primary roles.
Great, thank you, Dave. We've got another question here. It says, is this system managed internally or externally?
It's managed internally. In fact, I started to mention this earlier, that I've been serving, or have been serving, as the manager of operations and NJSTART vendor administrator for about 2.5 years since the system started getting tested within the state. And then in October, right after I got here from Minneapolis, by the way, my former boss announced that he was retiring after 30 years with the state. He had been the NJSTART program manager who took us all through the implementation and the testing and so on, got us close to the goal line, but not quite over. So he announced his retirement, so I inherited his job as well. So it is managed by yours truly with a staff of very competent, capable people who are helping with the heavy lifting. And in addition, we manage the relationship with the vendor. The vendor is Periscope Holdings, and we work very closely with them, have been working closely with them, but we manage that vendor relationship in addition to the entire program.
Great. Another question here. It says, if you have any vendor involvement in the implementation, are there things you wish you had evaluated or evaluated differently?
Absolutely. We had, in fact, I just wrote a memo about this because we had a whole host of issues that had been handled by the Office of Management and Budget. For example, whenever there's a discrepancy between a legal name that the IRS has versus what our folks at the Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services has in their database, that creates problems from a backup withholding standpoint. So issues like that that we've had to address could have been picked up earlier. One of the things that delayed us a little bit was that we had to connect a legacy system, the state's financial system, with NJSTART. I think they underestimated the challenge of integrating a system of that magnitude with NJSTART. So yes, I think the more feedback that someone can get in advance, whether it's from the vendor community, from internal clients, such as other divisions, is extremely helpful, because if we had known about some of the problems that we were going to have trying to connect with that interface, we could have saved a lot of time. But instead, when we launched, we had to basically identify problems, work very closely with Periscope to resolve them. And Periscope has an interesting system. They have their own bits. We call it the bits system. It's their high-speed internal tracking system for technical issues. And so when the vendor portal opened about 2.5 years ago, our plan was to begin to get vendors into the system. So we opened that up right away to get vendors registered. So we started from a base of 0 and are now over 17,000. We began to identify issues and then escalate them to Periscope, but that made it more difficult because we had so many different issues happening at the same time from the vendor perspective. For example, when they tried to register, they would get certain error messages, schema errors, and so on. And so we had to work through those. So I think in the beginning we may have experienced some frustration, but we were able to overcome it. The good news is we had a long list of open tickets a year ago, a year and a half ago, and that's been cleaned up, whereas today we have no open tickets for the vendor administration side. Now we're starting to see some of the errors on the agency side as we get agencies involved working through the system. Some are user errors. A handful at this point are technical issues that have had to get escalated to Periscope, but we are getting feedback from the agencies as they use the system more often, and that's how we can cover some of the things that remain unresolved. And then we address them immediately with our partners at Periscope.
We had a request for if you could do a demo of a solicitation posting.
Okay, sure. So we have everything here, and we would go to open bids. And this is what we have open as of today. All the detail is included. So let me take one that was recently posted. I'll just pick Sean's. And so this opens up so that I can acknowledge the bid. And then I proceed. It opens, and all of the documents are attached right here. This is what is open in the public domain. And go to my RFP. So we have all new solicitations are now administered through NJSTART. Once the premier was announced, that set us on that path. We have, and this is worth mentioning, we have over 2,000 contracts that are in our legacy system, Maxi. And we are in the process of converting each and every single one of those. Well, I shouldn't say each and every single one. There may be some that are either in protest or that may be delayed, or that are too large to convert, or that may have some issues. But for the most part, out of those 2,000 contracts, they will be converted. The vast majority, will be converted to NJSTART through a process that we are now fleshing out in partnership with Periscope. I don't want to get into the details of that one, but so basically, we've identified the way forward so that we can get those contracts from the Maxi world into the NJSTART world, and that too will serve as an incentive. That's probably going to be the greatest incentive to get agencies to make the transition from Maxi to NJSTART, because they won't be able to purchase off of Maxi at a certain point. So that is our plan going forward. But this is what it looks like.
Thank you for that. Another request for a demo was wondering if you could demo a vendor responding to a bid.
A vendor responding to a bid. All right. So let's see what I can. Let me show you. Let me go back. It may have logged me off by now. Let's see. If I can go back in as a vendor. See how far I can go back here. Show you how I would respond as a vendor. Okay, so now I have to go in as a seller. So my row has to change, switch gears, and I look for, see if I can find a bid. I find a bid that I'm interested in. Has to be open, and I want to open the bid. I acknowledge the bid. I get the detail on the bid. And then here is where I can create my quote. Well, first of all, let me back up. If I have a question, I can submit my question if the Q&A process is still open. But once that's done and I'm clear, I've got the details, my team's ready to go, I start to create my quote. And this is how I do it. This is where I do it. And so the logic of this system is very similar from one row to the other. You can imagine a series of tabs. We see the same thing on the vendor admin side. We see on the basic purchasing side. Now I'm in as a seller, and I see the same tabs. And so without going through each of these, this is how I would prepare my quote. I go to my General tab, Items tab, Questions, Subcontractors, Terms and Conditions. I get to Attachments. That's where I can load my forms, anything else that's required as part of the RFP. So the key is the RFP, reviewing that to ensure that all of the requirements are satisfied, whether I'm submitting my bid electronically or, by the way, the state of New Jersey at this particular time still accepts paper copies because there are some vendors that will not be on the system for a while. So our previous treasurer had made a decision, and I think our current treasurer is more along the line of getting folks into NJSTART quickly so that the number of electronic submissions will increase as rapidly as possible, as soon as possible. So as we try to get vendors to change from the old way of doing business to the new way of doing business, we're going to get more and more vendors registered and submitting bids electronically. This is exactly where they do it and how they do it.
I'm glad you touched on that. That was actually one of the questions we had coming up, was if you're still accepting paper bids. Do you have an idea of when you anticipate not receiving paper bids anymore, or is that kind of fluid?
I think it's fluid because at this point we're tracking. Well, so one of the things that we did, and our director, Ignacia McCleary, was responsible for this. She decided to begin tracking the number of electronic submissions versus paper copies in an effort to continue and do more outreach to some of these vendors who are still submitting paper. I think as we identify who they are and get these numbers, we'll be able to reach out to them to try to convince them to move into the electronic world. You're always going to have some mom and pop shops. You know, like we have, you folks on the call, I'm sure have heard about the New Jersey Turnpike. Well, guess what? We have a lot of small business operators who plow those roads in concert with the Department of Transportation. So folks are not really computer savvy. So we will always have groups of vendors who really don't see this as something that they can handle or manage. That will be problematic. But our guidance to them is to either hire someone who can help them or get a relative who can help them to bring them into the new age.
Great. I've got a couple other questions here, if that's all right.
Sure.
So one says, were there people or offices that were not on the implementation team that you wish had been?
Well, I would only be guessing now because remember, I inherited this job 2 months ago. My predecessor, a guy named John Mayo, handled all of the implementation over the past 2.5 years. So I'm sure John would say he wishes that he had more folks at the table from certain, again, I can't mention all the places, but from certain places, and that they had looked at some of these issues in advance. And I'm thinking specifically, again, back to some of these interfaces. It was a real challenge because these systems are so old. We're talking COBOL. I mean, some of you on the call were probably not even born when they launched some of these legacy systems. That was part of the problem. So because, I'll give you an example, the state's financial system, which is still, I think at some point, they'll probably look at upgrading that system as well. But right now, it's been around probably for over 20 years. And it's a really old system, but it's working, it's stable. It's how all of the fiscal payments are made. So we had to connect that to NJSTART. So yeah, I wish they had been at the table earlier. I'm sure they were. There's one particular subject matter expert who we use a lot. His name is John Burrows. He is great, and he has really helped us to catch up. So I'm sure he was at the table. Are there others? It's hard for me to say because I wasn't at the table that early on, but I think we've done a good job of catching up. And I do have to give credit to our folks within the Office of Management and Budget, and specifically the ones who work on NJCFS, the financial system, as well as the Office of Information Technology, OIT. They have been extremely helpful in getting us to navigate through some of this. And those are two that really stand out. The folks at DOORS, the Division of Revenue and Enterprise Services, have been awesome. They're responsible for our website. They're responsible for maintaining our legacy systems. So I know that John had the right partners at the table. Whether some missing, I'm sure we could have gotten more, but he, I think, did a great job just getting us to this point before he announced his retirement, went on to coach basketball, which is his real passion.
Well, that sounds like more fun anyway. Another question here says, can you describe the training program that supported user adoption and how the vendor partnered with the NJ team?
Yes. There's several components to that. Okay, so we have, and we're still negotiating with Periscope on additional training that will be required. And this I was a part of. So in the very beginning, the vendor set up, hands-on training right here at our facility in Trenton, New Jersey. They flew in a team of people, and those folks then began to identify folks within the organization that would play a role in the NJSTART implementation and initial training process. So again, they considered procurement specialists, business analysts, reporting experts, and other folks like yours truly, who's kind of a generalist, and they included us in the initial training. In the beginning, I felt like we were getting a crash course on the system with all of these roles, and our heads were spinning. And once we stepped away from that and people began to understand what their long-term role would be within NJSTART, we were then able to segment those groups into smaller groups of, for example, basic purchasers, vendor administrators, accounts payable folks or fiscal folks, and so on. And so then the training became very, very focused on roles and what people would actually be doing within the system. They also created two environments. They created an environment in test, and they created an environment in training. They've set all of that up so people could go in and play in the sandbox as they were comfortable, and then they could transition into another environment where, there might be a different kind of functionality or other things that they could do. I don't know exactly why they felt that two environments like that would be what we needed, but they're the experts. But that's what we had. We had a test environment and a training environment, and then there was, of course, production. So in the beginning, we focused on test and train, and that's where we lived. So that was the first piece. We had to get ourselves together here at the division before we could go out and start engaging agencies. So that was the first piece. Then it moved on from there. When the agency started to come on board, we then set up agency training. And at that point, we had reached a certain comfort level with NJSTART where it was a combination of Periscope people and division folks who could co-train agency people. We've also set up special training for our internal procurement bureau staff. And that's, again, because of the way that New Jersey is set up, and we may be unique, but we needed procurement bureau training for the Division of Purchase and Property, and then separate training for the using agencies, our client agencies. And so that's still going on. But so it was a multifaceted approach, multi-phased approach, starting with the Periscope people, right, the experts in the system that we purchased as a software as service, SAS, off the shelf. The state of New Jersey has customized it in many ways so that it meets our business and statutory needs. So it's been a true partnership in that regard. But every time that there's a new element to this that's added, it requires additional training. So it will be an ongoing process. But that's how it started. And at this point, we've identified our subject matter experts internally and externally. And so we are using them to then be leaders either within a specific agency or even here in our own shop. We have these team leaders who can then work with other, we have a staff of probably a little over 100 people. So we are identifying our team leaders who are the experts in NJSTART either from a basic purchasing standpoint or a vendor administration standpoint, and then they can carry the ball forward and continue to train folks internally and externally.
Dave, you said OIT was helpful. Do you know whether they or another office provided a project manager, or did your office manage the project itself, or was Periscope satisfying all project management needs?
No, we had a lot of project managers in the beginning. We had Periscope project managers or project leaders. We had one that we hired through OIT. We found that person through OIT in a contract that's in place. So we brought in a separate consultant to kind of run interference between the division and Periscope, and also to help us with a lot of the initial coordination. And this person was supposed to be, a certified project manager. This was his thing, and so he helped us in the very beginning with a lot of the coordination that was required with so many different players involved in the project. A lot of stakeholders, high-level folks, lower-level folks. And he helped us with that. So Periscope had consultants. We hired our own, and then OIT also appointed or assigned some of their own people to the project, and one in particular who was kind of the lead OIT person. So I'd say like a triad of Periscope, OIT, and the Division of Purchase and Property.
There's another request here. If you could show us some of the other tabs.
Of this particular one? Here's the general. Are they talking about the vendor? Here's the problem with this one. So I have to fill them in order for it to allow me to proceed. And I'm actually in production at this point, so I don't want to really do anything. But the way that it works is each tab has certain required fields, and those are marked with an asterisk. So in order for a vendor to prepare the quote, they must fill in everything that's required before they're allowed to move on to the next tab, such as items and so on. That's the limitation that I have on this. Now, we do have, if someone is interested, here's what you can do. You can download the reference guide on how to submit a quote, or take a look at the video. That's in the public domain. The ones that are password protected are for agencies. But anyone can grab the how to submit a quote reference guide that I showed you earlier. I can go back to that and show it to you, because that gives you a step-by-step in terms of how to do this. And this is what we give to the vendors. So this would be right here. You go to NJSTART vendor support page. It takes you to the Division of Purchase and Property, and hopefully I don't have too many tabs open at this point. You go to Vendor Reference Guides, okay, and then you go down here to Submit a Quote. There's a video. Take a look at the video, short, and submit a quote, the reference guide itself. And what we do is typically use screenshots of what vendors need to see. So this will do a much better job than I ever could do in terms of guiding someone through each of the tabs, because it's a step-by-step. Click on here, fill this in, acknowledge the bid, seeing a bid, bid contents, question and answer, more Q&A stuff, and then eventually here we go. So this is what you'll see, okay? Submit a quote, general tab, what you need to do. It's step-by-step. And so, again, we encourage vendors to read our materials, so they don't necessarily listen to us. They'll call anyway to talk to Alan and my other team members because they want a higher level of hand-holding. But we tell them everything is available online. Please read the materials and watch the videos, and then go in and register or, conduct business.
Thank you for showing that. Another question says, besides the training video for vendors, do you conduct any live training for vendors?
Good question. So our vision is, in addition to everything that we've done for vendors already, we have a series of newsletters, one called Smart Buyer. the other one called Smart Supplier. Those are published out of my office within operations. And so the Smart Supplier, let me see if I find it for you. It's available online as well. And let me go to log in here, vendor support. It should be right here. Smart Supplier. So this is one tool that we use for our vendor partners. In addition to that, we continue to add reference guides as needed. We continue to update our videos as needed. And our long-term plans, we're going to copy you, Jordan. We're going to look at the possibility of creating a webinar for vendors. I think one key milestone for us is to get all of these contracts converted from the legacy system to NJSTART. Once that happens, we're going to have thousands of contracts that are now in NJSTART that the procurement specialists will begin to push out to the vendor community. So we think at that point, we will be prepared with at least one webinar, maybe a series of webinars for the vendor community, and that is our intent. So at this point, we have not developed any webinars yet. We've concentrated on the reference guides, the videos, the FAQs, but we are moving in that direction.
Thank you. When you and I were talking earlier, you mentioned that you personally receive all the NJSTART phone calls and emails. They come at least partially through you and then go out to others, of course. And you mentioned it was something like over 6,000 emails already just today. Do you have a system in place for dealing with that type of volume or some kind of process?
It's due. It's making a case to our director to hire more people, which she has bought into and bought into a long time ago. We are staffing up as much as possible. As the volume increases, we have to get folks in place. So they've been very, very supportive. The director has, the treasurer has, in allowing us to get the staffing that we need. And so up to this point, yes, it's been a very small staff dealing with that volume of emails. There are really only two people who manage the emails. Alan Sidlow and I tackle those because we want our responses to be consistent. We want our responses to be acceptable from a legal standpoint. We have to send some of these questions to our legal team, our internal legal team, to ensure that we are answering appropriately and that we can respond, especially after a Q&A period has expired. So that's something that we have in place. The system has been working. The phone system is set up so that we have, in addition to the core team of vendor administrators, we have a backup support team. So if we're all busy, and we've done an email blast or something that increases the volume, which happens from time to time, then we have a backup team in place that has also been trained and is ready to support the core vendor admin team. So that's how we've been managing it. We're hoping that it always remains manageable, but in anticipation of an increase in volume, especially running an average of 1,000 new vendors per month, we are definitely hiring additional folks to support this effort.
Great, thank you. I got one more question I'll ask before I wrap up. What do you think sets NJSTART apart from other e-procurement systems?
Well, I have to say that the state of New Jersey is unique. I love my state, and I actually was born and raised in Manhattan, but I moved to New Jersey about 25 years ago to raise my kids. So we escaped Manhattan and ended up in the burbs in New Jersey. New Jersey is a very unique state, and I think that we get a bad rap sometimes because we have very many beautiful parts within our state. In addition to that, we have had to customize the system and create workaround solutions to certain things because the system, as it existed in the beginning, did not meet all of our business and statutory needs. We have unique requirements in the state. Some people say that we are not business friendly, and that's one of the reasons why we are trying to come up with a streamlined system that helps us to become a more business friendly state. So I think the thing that sets us apart the most is that we have been able to incorporate the elements within NJSTART that did not exist before that have allowed us to meet some of our critical business and statutory needs, particularly the NJSTART vendor portal and the forms repository that is incorporated within the system.
Well, thank you to everyone for joining us today, and thank you, David, for a great presentation. For everyone that attended, remember you can email me at jhenson@naspo.org. That's JHENSON at naspo.org if you want to receive certification credit for attending today's webinar. I'll be posting the recording of this webinar to NASPO's YouTube channel in the next couple of days if you would like to share it with other colleagues that were not able to attend today. Also, the next webinar in our series will take place January 24th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and will feature Richard Kotler presenting on Tennessee's Gold Award-winning submission for their innovative radio equipment and services contract. I'll be sending out an invitation and posting the registration information on the NASPO website in early January following the holidays for that one. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you all again for joining us, and thank you, Dave, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jordan.